Follow along as I recreate this necklace design from this pile of rubble. If you're new here, I work with 2-hole slider beads and fold-over magnetic clasps. I was wearing this particular necklace when the knot in the fishing line had given out, and it was time to restring. This is a very old design, so I wasn't exactly sure how it was assembled, and I had to do a little bit of investigating. After a little examination, I discovered that there were knots at the clasp end for this design, and I don't really make them this way anymore. It appeared that this necklace design was one very long strand and then knotted at the clasp end to complete the necklace. I don't typically make it like this anymore because if you think about it, at the clasp is where it's going to get the most pull. Because it's hanging off the back of your neck from the clasp, I try not to put the knots there, but sometimes you just have to. Anyway, for this actual design, the clasp isn't what failed, but it was the knot itself. And I'd like to go over a little bit about this clasp. This clasp is one of our single-strand fold-over magnetic clasps in silver. As you can see, there are loops at each end of this particular clasp that go in opposite directions. So one goes horizontally and one attaches vertically. We offer these clasps in various styles and colors, but essentially they all work the same. They all have these magnets at the one end that will attach to each other. The working mechanism behind this clasp is this fold-over design where you have a single loop and then the fold-over design that connects together to form a clasp that is very secure. This clasp isn't actually what failed in this design. It was actually the knot itself. Then I started looking closer at the actual pendant of this necklace design. This pendant was designed using our 2-hole slider beads in a floral type style. These beads have 2 holes at each end, but I didn't use all 4 holes in every bead. The way this pendant was designed is I actually linked 2 of these beads together using knots. Essentially, I took a small string of fishing line and then knotted these 2 beads together to create this drop pendant. In this tutorial, I won't be going over how I actually created this pendant because this wasn't destroyed in the breakage. It's time to start tackling the deconstruction of this necklace in order for me to reconstruct it. Here's a better look at how I was talking about it's just one long string going through the top of the pendant. I realized that this could be a giant nightmare of a mess, so I have this little cup that's supposed to, in theory, catch all of these beads. I wasn't exactly sure if I had lost any beads while it had broken. I was hoping I hadn't, but here we are. I'm going to put all the beads in the bucket that I have left, and then I'll count them all to see how to organize them on this jewelry design. Because this is a really old design, I probably don't have these exact beads laying around anymore, and if I do, it's going to be almost impossible to find, so I'll just find stuff to fill in if I have to. As I said, I was able to reuse the pendant in this design. Now I'm left with just the clasp, and in this particular design, I tied the knot around one of the round beads. I'm using fingernail clippers to cut off that extra fishing line along with that bead that I had knotted on. I like using clippers for this because they get up tight and close into your knot, and then you don't nick anything with scissors. Now the clasp is free as well, and I am just going to reuse this clasp in this next design. Here's what I have so far. I'm going to reuse the 2-hole slider bead pendant and the fold-over magnetic clasp. Next is counting these other beads. I started off by trying to count them in the bucket, and that became a nightmare. So I went and found my bead tray. You'll soon see that this bead tray actually didn't work either, and I ended up just finding the actual flecked bead tray where the beads can be laid out a little better. You get the idea. Sort your beads the way you want. And then I ended up using some fishing line actually all over again. Fishing line is my preferred stringing material because it's cheap and really easy to use, along with being very strong. I'm actually quite terrible at measuring my string because I do this so much, so I would say about 24 inches and then fold it over. Then I loop the string through the clasp, creating a 2-strand necklace. I found one of my tiny little silver beads. I talk a lot about these beads in many of my jewelry tutorials, and this bead is one that I use a lot to space out the string, but in this case, I'm going to use them to hold the string together. This will give you a nice clean finish at the clasp end, and then I start stringing up the sides of the necklace. Throughout this entire necklace, I will use the 2 strings and put them through the single holes. It was at this point that I discovered that I didn't actually understand the pattern that I used for the original design. So I pulled out this trusty bead tray that I got actually at the Dollar Tree. I don't usually use these trays very often, but I just wanted to have some sort of design and layout here. And then I started stringing it up. I wanted to reiterate that I started at the clasp end, so I'm going to be stringing these things up basically backwards. A lot of times we want to start at the pendant and work our way towards the clasp, but in this case, I go the opposite direction. Again, I've been jewelry designing for so long that sometimes I forget that this isn't something that just comes second nature. These bead trays, though, are awesome for beginner beaders because you can play around with the beads and the organization of them in in your jewelry design before you actually put them on the string. I will do one side of the necklace at a time because I'm going to tie the knot off at the focal bead or the pendant. Once I have the one side done, then I'll lay it in the bead tray for safekeeping and I'll start the other side. Here it's the same thing, but I loop the string through the other side of the clasp. I string the beads up and now we're ready to attach the pendant. I put the strings through the top holes of the pendant design. I will go through the holes of the top of the pendant and not the underside because I'm going to be tying the knot on the underside of the pendant. This will give it a very finished look at the pendant end as well, and it won't be pulling on that knot all the time against the back of your neck. You can do this exact same design with just about any of our 2-hole slider beads. Just connect them like I did and then make them into a pendant. Of course, swapping out the beads on the necklace design will also give you just a completely different look, but this is a good way to see a template on how I utilize our 2-hole slider beads as pendants. If you're interested in learning more about 2-hole slider beads or fold-over magnetic clasps, follow along. I do beading tutorials here on social media all the time. If you're interested in purchasing either of these components, the link is in my bio.